If you enjoy what you hear here today, please consider supporting me on my Patreon page. Every dollar helps, and you get to see content that you won't see here.
Chapter 25. Waking Up. When Rainbow Dash woke next, it was to the dim illumination of the moon outside her window, casting stripes of pale light across the floors and walls of her bedroom in Canterlot Castle. Turning her still, heavy-feeling head to the left, she could just make out the flowing, ethereal tail of Princess Celestia poking out from the balcony. Considering the angle, Rainbow guessed that the night had just now gotten fully into motion. After a few seconds, Celestia turned around and slowly stepped back into the room, her eyes downcast and her ears flat against her head. She glanced up and jumped in surprise to see Rainbow Dash looking back. With a long, tired groan, Rainbow sat up slightly to stretch.
Oi, what happened?
She mumbled softly, reaching her forelegs up to rub at her eyes. Celestia looked at Rainbow for several moments, her eyes shifting rapidly. A sign that Rainbow had come to learn meant that Celestia was trying to think of something quickly.
I'm not sure of all the details. From what I understand, both you and Twilight passed out, after going still and silent for several minutes. According to Fluttershy, you were both having flashes before losing consciousness.
Celestia explained slowly before sitting down next to Rainbow's bed and reaching a hoof out to stroke her mane. Rainbow hummed and relaxed under her adoptive mother's ministrations, closing her eyes. Then, her eyes opened up wide and she looked to Celestia urgently.
Wait, Celestia, how long were we out?
Celestia flinched and set her foreleg down on the floor beneath her.
You've been out for 4 days, Rainbow Dash. I don't know if Twilight is awake yet, as her parents are the ones looking after her.
Rainbow's jaw dropped in shock. She looked down at her blankets and took a deep breath.
Wow. That long, huh?
Rainbow was snapped out of her despondent mutterings when Princess Celestia climbed up onto the bed with her, settled down behind her, and pulled her into a relieved embrace.
I was worried about you,
she muttered quietly to Rainbow, who in turn let herself be hugged, even snuggled into it a bit, though she would forever deny it.
Huh? Really?
She asked all the same, glancing up at Celestia curiously, who then nodded slowly.
Yes. When I examined you and Twilight after you passed out, your minds were incredibly active. There was so much going on in there that I was afraid you either wouldn't wake up, or if you did, you would be damaged.
Celestia admitted, a nervous shiver passing through her entire body as she pulled Rainbow closer.
Damaged?
Rainbow asked carefully, reaching her forelegs forward to drape them over Celestia's in as much of a hug as her current angle would allow.
A brain that doesn't rest can suffer serious damage. You might not have been yourself. You may have awoken with amnesia, or worse, you may not have been able to do anything. Awake but unaware.
Rainbow's eyes widened slightly when she felt something wet drip onto the back of her neck. She craned her neck to see that Princess Celestia's eyes were letting the occasional tear slip out.
Whoa. Hey, are you okay?
Rainbow asked gingerly, shifting so she could face the alabaster alicorn more directly. Celestia nodded rigidly before wiping a foreleg over her eyes to brush away the tears.
Yes, I am. I don't want to lose you, Rainbow. Not when...
She fell short in her words, her eyes turning down to evade Rainbow's gaze.
Not when what?
Rainbow pressed gently, touching a hoof to Celestia's shoulder in reassurance. Celestia looked up for only a moment before dropping her eyes again.
Rainbow, forgive me. I said too much. I can't tell you Not quite yet.
Rainbow's eyes turned firm as a disapproving frown crossed her face.
Nuh-uh, not this again.
I'm sorry?
Celestia looked up at Rainbow in surprise at the filly's words. Rainbow jabbed Celestia, albeit lightly, in the chest with her hoof.
You're not dodging this one. I let you dodge it every other time as it was related to the flashes Twilight and I keep having, and those are usually harmless. But this?
Rainbow shook her head fiercely.
It sounds like you've got something up your sleeve for me directly, and I, for one, would very much like to know.
Celestia fell silent for several seconds before a small smile formed on her face.
You are so much like your aunt.
The room fell completely silent. Rainbow Dash got up and took a step back to look at Celestia more completely.
What?
Celestia sniffled slightly, a fond smile crossing her face.
Your aunt. Luna. My little sister.
Luna? That doesn't sound familiar. Where is she?
Rainbow asked curiously. She was taken aback by the sudden fragility Celestia was putting on display. Her eyes slowly turned back up to Rainbow's from the sheets they had been staring at, revealing a dozen lifetimes of regret.
Princess Luna is...
Celestia stood and slowly trotted to the balcony, beckoning Rainbow Dash to follow her. Rainbow did as instructed, coming up to Princess Celestia's side and looking up. Celestia pointed at the moon, and the etchings of the mare in the moon looking back down at them. Rainbow's eyes widened in realization. She turned to Celestia, gawking at her disbelievingly.
Whoa. You mean that Nightmare Moon is your little sister?
Celestia turned a firm look on Rainbow, making her go quiet. The intensity in her eyes was swiftly lost to a look of guilt.
In a way, Nightmare Moon was the new name that all of my little sister's jealousy and resentment took up for itself. It usurped her, in a way.
Rainbow watched as Celestia sat down, locking eyes with the mare in the moon longingly. Rainbow turned to look and gulped before voicing her next question.
So she changed?
Celestia sighed heavily.
One of the gravest risks of being an alicorn is the duality of the mind that comes with it. Every spark of magic creates a sort of light within the pony that the magic belongs to. And the brighter that light, the more powerful and more concentrated that magic becomes. The longer and darker the shadow it casts will invariably become. The ascension of an alicorn brings even more magic into a pony, allowing for truly monstrous shadows to be cast in their wake.
She turned her gaze back to Rainbow Dash.
It was that darkness burning behind my sister that swallowed her, took a life of its own. Nightmare Moon was born out of Luna's own jealousy and resentment.
Jealousy and resentment?
Rainbow echoed, most of that magic talk going right over her head. She looked away for a moment in thought, before glancing back up at Princess Celestia.
What was she jealous about?
Celestia grimaced and looked up at the moon again.
Me.
Huh?
Princess Luna raised the moon each and every night. She always had a fondness for the calm and the quiet, for softer shades and subtler notions. She found the night a perfect time to relax and reflect, to appreciate the less obvious beauties of our world.
Celestia closed her eyes and sighed.
I should have seen it sooner, but there were very few ponies who actually saw her night. Most went to sleep at sundown, and most still do. She saw such a wellspring of beauty and wonder in the night, and no pony else even bothered to lurk, preferring to work and play in the day before turning in. She had no pony to share it with.
Rainbow looked down slightly at the city beneath them, deep in thought.
And you had to send her away?
Celestia nodded.
Yes. It has been almost 996 years since then, by now.
Rainbow wilted and looked away.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. She won't be gone much longer,
Celestia said with a small smile forming on her lips. Rainbow looked up with a raised eyebrow, seeing an eagerness in her adoptive mother's eyes she had never seen before. Celestia turned her eyes back to Rainbow Dash.
Before I say any more, I want you to swear to me that you will not repeat any of what I am about to tell you.
Rainbow's eyes widened just slightly in surprise, but she nodded solemnly.
I won't say a word. I promise.
Celestia nodded, satisfied before speaking.
Her imprisonment will end on the 1000th year of the Summer Sun celebration, and I want so very much for you to meet her. She'll finally come home and I can introduce her to her new niece, you to your aunt, and
her smile only grew.
And I can finally have my sister back home.
Rainbow nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. She looked away again before closing her eyes. A thought occurred to her.
When Princess Luna comes back, will she, still be Nightmare Moon?
Celestia sagged and nodded.
Yes, but that is a matter we can address when the time draws nearer. For now, we have almost 5 years until she is released. Let's not worry too much about it for the time being, okay?
Rainbow nodded in understanding before reaching over and hugging Princess Celestia's foreleg. Celestia giggled and brushed Rainbow's mane back a few times before the filly looked back up at her.
On a somewhat unrelated note, were you by my bed the whole time I was out?
Rainbow asked with a small smirk starting to form. Celestia nodded and reached down to nuzzle her daughter.
Of course I was, Rainbow Ash. Why wouldn't I be? Even if others see it as only by paperwork, you are my daughter, and I love you the same way any mother should love their foal.
Ugh.
Rainbow play gagged before punching Celestia in the elbow.
Try not to take the sap too far, okay? I just got up and I can only take so much.
Celestia merely smiled and nodded.
As you wish.
She then slowly stood back to her full height and turned.
As it is, however, the hour grows late and I need rest. I will speak with you in the morning, my little pony.
All right. Good night to ya.
Rainbow called back before letting herself up into her bed again.
Don't know how I'm gonna sleep. I mean, I've been out for days, but, well, I'll think of something.
She grinned confidently at Celestia. Celestia paused halfway through the door before looking back at Rainbow Dash with a smile of her own. Said smile slowly faded, however.
Actually, before I forget, there is one last matter I wish to discuss with you before I go to bed for the night.
Rainbow lifted an eyebrow as Celestia closed the door, locked it, and then cast a soundproofing spell over the entire room. She slowly stepped forward and sat down to look at Dash expectantly in the eye. Rainbow fidgeted under her gaze.
Okay, what?
Celestia sat upright and nodded, as if to herself, before speaking.
The flash that you and Twilight had. I wish to know exactly what it is you saw.
She raised a hoof before Rainbow could begin, leveling a firm look at her.
This flash was greatly different from the others, so I do not want you to spare any details. Tell me everything.
Feeling suddenly nervous, Rainbow Dash could only hope that Twilight's eye for detail had rubbed off on her a little bit. She opened her mouth and began to recite what she and her friend had seen.